You can make a difference. By becoming a supporter of our channel, you not only help us thrive, but also become an active part of our community. The link to join us is in the description. What do we need to be happy? We talk all the time about this so-called happiness. We constantly follow people in their attempts to be happy. Our social networks, right? So many people posting what makes them happy and even lying about what makes us happy. What makes us happy? What makes us fulfilled? And from these questions, we begin to debunk because we lie to ourselves. How many times do I meet people and recognize this in myself? A deceitful structure around fulfillment. We pretend to be fulfilled. We pretend to know what should be done. Often we stay on the surface of things, of situations, and don't even have the courage to touch what really needs to be touched to make our lives better. We have so many pursuits. Sometimes you try to be happy through your work. You work hard because you want to achieve something that makes you happy. You date. You try to be happy through this relationship, or you're already married. You try to be happy in this marriage. This life is so short, isn't it? So that we waste the opportunity to be fulfilled, happy men and women. Because that is God's desire for us. Conversion is this. It is to identify if in the structure of your life today, there is something that is an obstacle to your human fulfillment. So when I look at the structure of my life, at what today I need to renounce, I am seeing a reality that is favorable to my growth. I need to identify what today in the structure of my life is representing an obstacle to my fulfillment. It might be that you identify a friendship, for example, a pseudo-friendship, a false friendship, a camaraderie that has been an obstacle to your spiritual, emotional growth. So we need to constantly articulate the reality that surrounds us. I like to call this our environments. And from these environments, we seek, honestly, to be in the place we should really be. I think every human being, even if not very conscious of this, is always trying to be happy, even when they make mistakes. Even when we make mistakes, we are somehow trying to be happy. You might be under the influence of someone who does not wish you well, who is addicting you to something that destroys you, or who is taking you out of a context of fidelity to yourself. Yes, we can often become addicted to people who do us harm. And suddenly, the enemy starts undermining our courage, our willingness, and we stray from the path that God wants for us. I repeat that it is a path of fulfillment, a path of happiness. God does not want our suffering. We suffer because we are human. It is part of our condition, but it is very petty to think that God is sending those sufferings to us. No, He doesn't need to send them. Sufferings are there in the path of everyone who wants to live well. Just as He also cannot rid us of these sufferings, because they are part of life. It is part of life to suffer. What He assures us is His presence. So, it requires a lot of intellectual honesty. We are talking here about putting intelligence to work. What today, in the structure of my life, is an obstacle to my human fulfillment. You've heard me talk here about human fulfillment, which is precisely this adaptation that we make of everything we can and cannot do. Yes, because a fulfilled human being is one who has already acknowledged everything they can and cannot do. And from this can and cannot, a space of satisfaction is created. It is the satisfaction of being who you are, of doing what you do, of working at what you work, of studying what you study, of living with whom you live. And we cannot always, within this fulfillment, do only what pleases us. Personally, I like to think that God is always favorable, that my experience with the Lord is always favorable to me. Never, never, never could I understand that my experience with God could be an obstacle to my human fulfillment. God wants my best. And a long time ago, I started removing from myself, some misguided understandings that God wanted my suffering, for example. God has no interest in making you an unhappy person. Unhappiness is not a project of God for our lives. That's why in the project He has for each of us, He never removes the obstacles, because in the obstacles, we find the strength to achieve what we so desire. Yes, we need to overcome daily the obstacles that prevent us from living this happiness, this human fulfillment. But the problem is when we do not know when we do not have clarity about what really makes us happy. I like to understand happiness with a bit more depth. It might be that the word happiness is very empty of meanings. It might be that it has become very empty in our days. We grow a lot when we are challenged, much more than when we are flattered, when we accept the provocation of life itself. Do you know how life provokes us? With our discomfort. That's why it's so dangerous to take medicine for sadness, unless you have been diagnosed with chemical depression. And then, my people, it's never too late for us to be able to change the structure of our life, to change directions. Just as Jesus was not afraid to change the lives of those who passed by him. Because Jesus knew all of this much more deeply than we know today. How many people get cured when they quit a job, for example, when they give up that job to earn less but work at something they love? How many people end their conflict when they end a relationship? But they suffer. At least they are suffering to heal. Yes, but usually when sadness comes and we numb it with a pill, we miss the happy opportunity to discover what bothered us, and then we don't change what bothers us. You just keep taking pills for your sadness, and that's why it doesn't get resolved. You just keep pushing the conflict forward, when in fact what would solve it and eliminate the need for the pill is confrontation, a change of pieces on the board. How many people resolve their sadness, their anguish, when they are able to put people in the right places? When you shield your heart so that it is not the target of someone else's lack of love? How many people improve, heal, when they are able to drop out of college and say, "This is not what I want for myself"? I remember once I met a girl who was studying to please her mother, and she told me that. She had the courage to say. I asked her, "What do you study?" She said, "Architecture." And, "Do you like architecture?" She said, "No. I'm doing it because my mother wants me to." I found that very cruel. Doing the opposite of what you intend to please your mother. Something is wrong in that relationship. I don't receive things on a silver platter, as is commonly said when things come easily. God gave us freedom as a gift. I carry it within me. You carry it within you. We all received it. Now, being free is another matter. It's like having a plant that needs to grow through the care we give it. When you water it, when you fertilize it, so that all the potential in the seed develops, and that seed can become the tree that potentially exists within it. The same thing is true of freedom. Being able to say, "I am free today," means acknowledging that you are in the process of liberating your own freedom. Because only those who possess themselves can offer themselves. Only those who are truly free can experience this. This freedom might be what fascinates me most in life, because sometimes I find myself a prisoner of such childish feelings, like jealousy and comparison. Increasingly, life leads me to understand, from my experience and the experience of those around me, that the true experience of God places us in a context of maturity that frees us from all the burdens and ties that childishness imposes on us. Sometimes we don't understand that the lower realities of our lives, the passions of the soul, need to be mastered from top to bottom, not bottom to top. So it's really an exercise, a spiritual exercise, to raise the drawbridge of the inner castle and say, okay, let's meet these folks who inhabit me. Often, our love, instead of protecting, it unprotects because it infantilizes. It's often marked by a lack of reality in love. It's like a person in love who can't see reality. A passionate mind, a mind very involved with another person who has just arrived, is a danger. It's dangerous to make wrong decisions. Passion blinds. I always like this distinction. Passion is the antechamber of love. We can only say we love after extinguishing all the incendiary fires of passion, because they are dangerous. And you have the right not to like someone, Fabio. We have the right not to like someone. Liking is one thing, loving is another. I can sympathize deeply with you. We have a delightful connection. But I don't have to love you, because I didn't choose to love you. Loving is a choice. Sometimes in our daily lives, we don't know this difference, and we don't even give ourselves the right not to like someone. If someone is almost dying and needs my help, I go there, I am a Christian, I serve Christ, but I don't need to eat popcorn at the cinema with the person. Of course, you can set a limit. Yes, with affection. Love includes respect. That's what you're saying. I won't harm you, I won't boycott you. But on the other hand, I also don't have the obligation to socialize, to establish this daily bond, to exchange phone numbers. Sometimes people are very confused. It's real immaturity in understanding Christianity. Oh, how many times have I suffered from this immaturity? I have been so immature. Oh my God. So much that today it is easier for me to understand when someone is immature with me. Sometimes I meet people absolutely on the margins of the Christian experience, still based on obligations, suffocated by the obligations that happen to exist within Christianity. And sometimes I meet some people so free, who seem to have found the deepest aspects of Christianity. You spoke of the stages we need to dive into to reach what is most untamable in us. And Christianity is a movement precisely that goes through conquering what is untamable to then live the freedom of being who you are. Discipline is the word of today. We are increasingly immersed in a context that relieves us of discipline, and this is very sad. It's very sad when we identify that our children are becoming strange. They're becoming strange to any kind of sacrifice. Because life has to be like this. Life, we have to make it easier. Fine, today's conveniences are very good, but they cannot take away from us the opportunity to live asceticism and the discipline that make every man, every woman find this balance, this maturity. How the world today stimulates us outward all the time. How difficult is inner life these days? It's a costly task. My therapist always said, we think that inner life comes for free, comes in the life package. I was born, so I already have everything internally installed. It's as if I had several programs to run, but I need to understand how they work. And really stopping talking or being away from people is still not being alone. It's still not being silent inside. Sometimes we think we don't have control over our thoughts. Yes, we do have control over our thoughts. Thoughts need to be educated at a high level. We need to elevate the level of thought with good content. Oh, my head is full of nonsense. For intellectual life, you need to educate thought through concentration. Spiritual life is no different, right? Sometimes we pray asking God, take this out of my head. And then our Lord sometimes provides us with a good movie, a good book, good music to educate and channel our thoughts, and we end up fighting in an inner ignorance about how to deal with it. And in fact, we need to live that reality of the superior dominating the inferior. So I have my instincts, my emotions, my feelings that are more conscious, my thoughts, my will, which are decisions based on my thoughts. And then comes the spirit. I can even place will and thought here. No one, nothing can enslave the mentality of someone who truly wants to be free. It's like in that movie, The Shawshank Redemption, when that man spent so many days in solitary confinement, imprisoned there. When he got out, they asked him, how did you manage to stay there? He said, it was easy. I listened to music all the time. Then the other said, but how? There's no music there. It's all in my head. It's here. It's in the head that we are liberated. That's why it's here that God happens. When God enters my mentality, when God changes the way I look at myself, the way I look at the world, He will naturally change the way I look at those around me. He will change the way I see my restrictions, my losses, and then there is no other destiny to seek, to conquer, to experience, but satisfaction. Despite so many difficulties, we can smile and say, life is worth living because my head is helping me make it worth it. Father Fabio, why is it so much easier to hurt the people we love than to hug them and say kind things? It's because, in reality, human aggressiveness is undeniable. Everyone has aggressiveness, even the sweetest people. Those who speak calmly, they are full of aggressiveness. Some control it more, others control it less. Some control it too much, and suddenly it explodes because aggressiveness is a very positive impulse. We can't think that aggressiveness is just a bad thing. No. Aggressiveness is an impulse that even helps us succeed in life. In many moments of our lives, we lost because we lacked aggressiveness. That impulse to move forward, to overcome, to deal with the difficulties that are part of us. People who are too soft don't like that constant nourishment. Nothing is good. It gets better one day, the next day, it's not good again. These people lack aggressiveness, a positive aggressiveness, which is this survival impulse, which we inherited. This is ancestral in us. Often we take out our aggressiveness on the people we love because we are unprepared to deal with this aggressiveness. And today we know, we talked about this before finishing the first segment, we are living in a time of great tension. We are overly demanded because we have many possibilities. Humans end up getting lost among all these possibilities. And this generates a great anxiety, which is the feeling of not reaching, of not living what they need to live. And it is natural that at a certain moment, this aggressiveness will be directed at those closest to us. Because you can't. A very simple example. Sometimes a guy is at work really wanting to hit his boss, but he can't. He will get home stressed with everything he experienced, and his poor family will take the brunt of it. And that's where the issue of our control comes in, folks. We need to control this aggressiveness a little. And I'm not saying something I don't need to hear myself, okay? Because many times I am uncontrolled with my aggressiveness. So I need to be very careful not to let my aggressiveness come out at the wrong time, in the wrong way. I need to direct my aggressiveness into my books, my reflections, my physical activity that I make a point of doing. That's where I need to channel my aggressiveness so that I can treat people fairly. I can't take out on my mother the anger I carry within me, which is natural to my being. And you know how difficult the mother-child relationship is, because it is the place where these aggressions are very much on the surface. Maybe because it is the closest bond we have. With all due respect to the father, the closest bond, I think, is with our mother. And it is natural that our greatest difficulty is with her as well. It is very common to find children who have a hidden hatred for their mother, a hidden hatred for their father, and do not have the psychological conditions to assume this aversion, because in the name of this romantic love we are raised with, that a child should never oppose their mother, that a child should never say, "I hate you." It is natural that at a certain moment in life, our aggressiveness makes us experience this hatred towards the people we love most. Because hatred is the opposite of love. It's the same thing. Psychology teaches us that love and hatred come from the same impulse, the same source. So, managing this aggressiveness today is a necessity. Because you must have seen this happen many times, that sometimes a person is capable of pulling out a gun and killing another person in traffic because of the intolerance of that moment of aggressiveness. So, for us not to need to kill each other, for us not to go around slapping each other, we need to discover where we can channel this blessed aggressiveness in the right way, in a positive way. If you have a lot of aggressiveness in you, channel this aggressiveness to work in your favor. Your creative process, your dynamic, your entrepreneurial spirit, channel it there. This is not magical. It is not overnight. But with awareness, I know I am aggressive. So I need to be careful that my aggressiveness doesn't end up harming others. I personally asked God during this Lent for the gift of silence, And it's not just the silence of speech. It's the silence of, the written word, that need to immediately respond to others, to everything that bothers you, to everything you find invasive. I want to have the right to be silent. I don't want to have to explain everything all the time. This is a right we need to preserve. At home, sometimes it's like this. Sometimes in a relationship, how many times are you demanded by the other? You have the right to be silent. You have the right to make your silence. And the other needs to understand that your silence might be the moment you are taking care not to say what you wouldn't want to say. So, the control of this aggressiveness today needs to go through this experience of inner life, as we talked about in the previous segment. The inner life, this experience of cultivating who you are, of having your moment of relaxation every day, even if it's just 10 minutes, folks. I particularly think it must be very difficult to live in a very crowded house where you don't have the right to your personal silence. Isn't it difficult? You who live with many people in the house. At home, I have my space. There are the people who work with me, my friends who visit my house, the people from my close circle, my family. But I am very reserved. When I want my silence, I don't even make an effort to be polite. Look, folks, I'm leaving. I withdraw because I need this spiritual life, this inner life, because otherwise I become worse than I already am. And I don't want to. I don't want to be worse than I am. I don't want to get worse. I don't want to move backward. I want to move forward. So I want to discover everything in my behavior, in my choices that will favor my progress. You need to do the same thing. It's your right. But here at home, it's difficult. Create your space. Create your routine. Discover in your daily life a way to cultivate this inner life. Some people read the gospel of the day. I think the gospel of the day is an excellent way to create inner life. Because when you commit to reading the gospel of the day, you have the daily liturgy. You can follow it through the Bible in year A, year B, year C. You read the gospel of the day, you stay in communion with Jesus' word, and at the same time, create your 10-15 minutes. You read the gospel and make your reflection, your moment of silence, which will help a lot in controlling this aggressiveness. Then there are other things that help as well. Physical activity, as we have already mentioned, the prayer group, the sharing group, reading. My God, how a book calms us down, folks. Books are fantastic. Blessed is the person who learned from childhood the pleasure of reading. They will be much more peaceful in old age than those who don't like to read, because it occupies the time, right? When you are getting old, what will you do? In old age, we will have much more time, because you will stop working, you will be retired. I can't wait. You won't be in the rush anymore. So you will have all the time in the world to cultivate yourself. What a wonder, having extra time for this inner life to shape your routine in a way that favors channeling all these positive impulses, like aggressiveness, which, if placed wrongly, becomes a tool of destruction. Father, I wanted you to help me deal with the feelings I'm experiencing. I lost my husband and also recently lost my son, and I'm having trouble coping with the grief. You would say, it's not easy indeed, my daughter. Losing two people who are so important in your life, it's like the structure of your home has somehow collapsed, and it takes time. The heart needs time. We cannot expect healing today if we need to go through the process that will result in healing. And grief, it's a process. What is a process? That it naturally needs to go through a process. When someone dies within our home, my people, the structure is completely changed. It's impressive how one person, if you remove just one person, it's impressive how the family structure is modified. And it's like a moving truck whose pumpkins in the back rearrange themselves as we hit the road. It's a rural language that I've seen a lot. Fill the truck with pumpkins, hit the road, they start shaking, making noise. Suddenly they settle down and you don't even remember that you had all those pumpkins behind. But until they settle, it makes a lot of noise. That's how it happens in our lives. Whenever someone is taken away, the truck makes noise. And we think that noise will be eternal. I remember the death of my sister when Heloisa died. It was so traumatic at home. It was so difficult to restore the house without her presence, even though she didn't live with us anymore. She lived in Belo Horizonte at the time, but you have to restructure your heart because the other person lives within us. family is not just the place where people live in the same house. Family is when people live within each other. And when someone dies, we lose that tenant. You lose that presence that was within you. Of course, the longing will remain, but you don't embrace anymore. You don't find, you don't talk. So this organization of mourning, it will need to go through the process of getting used to the absence. And in your case, Jose, you are still going through the harsh experience of losing two people in a very recent period. My daughter, you will have to have a lot of patience with your feelings. This won't change overnight. You will have to accommodate these two people in your longing, in your feelings, so that you can continue your life as it was before. Of course, it will never be the same, because it can't. It's not for those who haven't lost either. Life is not the same. Life can never be the same, even for those who haven't lost. Life is always in motion. Just the other day, a friend of mine found out her son was ill. She was devastated. The same illness her husband had, which was extremely painful for them, she found out her son had too. What to say? Of course, we say, I'm with you, I'm praying with you, but that's a dilemma she will need to face. No matter how much I love her, I cannot enter her heart and live that suffering for her. I even took her in all the intentions of my masses during the pilgrimage. And I asked God, I asked Our Lady in a special way, since we were in Marian territories, that Our Lady would do in her heart what God did in your heart when accompanying the agony of your son. The boy's illness is not a death sentence, but it touches on hardship. It touches on suffering. We don't want our children to be ill. After the news, which at first seems like the end of the world, then because we are people of faith, our process is to rebuild reality, and we come out of it even better. So, we can never want life as it was before. That's something for children. That's an illusion. Life will never be the same for those who have lost and for those who haven't. We need to adapt to the movements that time has made, always in the daily effort to put soul into our body, to give meaning to our life, to never allow difficulties, losses to prevail over all of this. Now, my daughter, as time goes by, we mature with the event. When God has the opportunity to act in our lives in these moments of pain, it's amazing how we are changed for the better. And this is possible, yes, not only because it happened in my life, but because it happened in the lives of thousands of people who give wonderful testimonies of overcoming, who help us understand the pedagogical dimension of pain, of suffering. It's the proof before our eyes of many people who have also gone through the harsh experience of losing children, husbands, mothers, siblings, boyfriends, girlfriends, spouses, and after continuing existence. Now, patience with the process is important. I cannot anticipate this healing. It's like the healing process. A friend of mine, Adelina, my travel companion from Fortaleza, spontaneous all the time. That's why I liked her from the first time I saw her. She wears her heart on her sleeve. And then, after one of my preachings during the pilgrimage, she gave me a little note with just one sentence like this: "What doesn't inflame cannot be cured." Inflammation is the body's first movement to be healed in what has been hurt. So, inflammation is a manifestation of the body's own immunity, wanting to expel what is attacking the flesh. And it is indeed. A simple little sentence made me remember that sometimes when we were kids, we'd get a thorn in us. That thorn hurt. Hurt for 2-3 days until it turned yellow, and then the secretion itself would work to expel that relief. We squeezed it, it all came out, that ugly thing. The thorn came out, and that's it. The body was there, without pain. It's like that nasty pimple on your face. It hurts, 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 hurts. And you go there, do everything wrong, give it a squeeze. Isn't it, Christian? Almost breaks the mirror. Relief. Dermatologists shouldn't even hear us talking. They can't know that we do that, no. But when you have that inflamed thing, when you go there, give it a prick like this. After the inflammation is the movement of healing. In our hearts, when we lose someone, we are inflamed with pain. And if we allow that inflammation to go through the natural process of expelling, of throwing away what is infected in us, our future will not be like before. I repeat, even for those who haven't lost, it's not the same, but we can make that future worth it. I am a very sad person, besides this married talk. When I got married, with 1 year of marriage, I lost my first child. Then I went through a lot of sadness. Because of that, I spent over a year with a lot of depression, a lot of sadness. Then other children came, 4 daughters came. I raised them all well. When it was this year, which ended yesterday, from January 11th, I lost Vida's grandson to drowning, right, at 4.5 years old. This father has greatly affected my life. I was very sad, very shaken, very shocked. I almost died. Even today, I carry this sadness within me. I really wanted to live this father. This child has stirred me deeply. It was like this. It was worse than my son's case. It was much worse because it was like this. My son's death was sudden because he drank a porridge and then he didn't choke. But the porridge he drank was ingested into his lungs. And my grandson's death was a drowning death, a death that I found very sudden, very abrupt. So I couldn't accept this. Then I became a person against God, full of anger, full of resentment, of sadness, of revolt. You know, Father, I used to be a very godly person, very prayerful. Then I blamed myself a lot. Why? Why did I blame myself? Because I thought I had prayed too little, blamed the person, blamed God. I thought God should have gone there and taken him out of that water, saved my grandson. So, Father, it was so hard. We made it 4.5 years. It was very hard for me. It's still very hard. Asking God to help me, to enlighten me from yesterday to today, for me to get rid of this sadness, this anguish. It's a very heavy burden on my shoulders. This sadness, this anguish comes and goes. For me, it's a very, very heavy burden. I need to get better from this because I can't go on like this, because otherwise I won't resist, Father. I won't die of sadness, of suffering, and I can't go on like this. And there you go. Now I want you to call me. What should I do, Father? FG. Mrs. Maria, the first thing that is very beautiful already to identify in you is the desire to change. Every time we are faced with an event that traumatizes us, that takes the ground from under us, because an event like this takes our ground, an innocent, a person we love, dead there. I'm remembering Mother. Our friend from Sergipe also, who went through the same experience, and she took her son out of the water. She was the one who took him out, a dead boy. I heard this story, and I had the opportunity to be with this woman, who is the mother of this boy, on the banks of the Jordan River, when we went to the Holy Land. And I remember that when I baptized her, the word that came to me was this. I poured the water from the Jordan River over her head, and I said to her like this, take your son out of the water once and for all. Because from the time of the boy's life, of the boy's death, until that day, she was keeping the boy drowned. She didn't take him out of the pool because she only lived around that. She didn't do anything else. She lived all the time the experience of drowning. It's that old story, right, folks? The event is there, and I can't detach from it. So, no matter how long it has been, the boy is still drowned, the boy is still in the water. Before that word, she decided to react. And it was very beautiful to hear this from them. Father, we are very grateful that that word helped my sister to continue her life. Mrs. Maria Duzzy, I wish I could take this pain out of your heart, but maybe you can also start taking your grandson out of the water. Don't keep him drowned anymore. Don't put your thoughts anymore. Don't fix your idea, your story in his drowning. First thing, remove the guilt. There's no need to find blame for such a tragic story. Even if you find out who's to blame, it won't bring the boy back. It won't solve our pain. No. What we need to do now is to continue life from what we have. We can't take the boy out of there anymore. We can't resurrect him anymore. And we can't bring him back to life. There was no time to do anything, but now there's a beautiful way to make resurrection happen. Restoring life in the family, bringing the joy back. Because we all are deprived, Mrs. Maria Dulce. When we have someone at home who cannot live through the process of loss, all of us around are harmed. We are harmed. And it's beautiful for you to say, I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to be a sad person. This reaction is already God's action in you. The time of revolt, it's part of life. We are human. We are fragile. We will revolt. We will scream. we will blaspheme. But this has to be temporary. Screaming and blasphemy don't heal our hearts. No. What heals our hearts is the prayer of surrender. And this must be your prayer, your daughter's prayer. Lord, I cannot change the death of my grandson, so I want to entrust him to you. I want you to take care of him and remove this guilt from us. Grant us the grace to continue living without needing to find someone to blame for this tragedy. Entrusting to God does not mean we alienate ourselves. No, we only entrust to God what cannot be fixed anymore, because the rest we run after because He is helping us to achieve it. But what cannot be fixed anymore, leave it in His hands. Remove that weight from you. You are trying to solve the problem, and there's no way to solve this problem. There's no way to bring this boy back. So today, removing him definitely from the waters is to accept that death happened, but that now we want to continue life, qualifying our daily lives, our history, preparing our future in a more beautiful way. Entrust this dear grandson of yours to the Lord and see him as an intercessor praying for you. He is a legitimate representative in the heaven, a legitimate representative of the family who is in heaven without suffering. There's nothing bad, only us here who need to deal with this pain. As we conclude this spiritual exploration on Path of Faith, we invite you to engage with us by leaving your comments, liking this video, sharing it with others, and subscribing to our channel for regular doses of uplifting messages.